Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May. And today we're going to be talking about healing with food with Lynne Bowman. She is and has been featured at women's expos throughout the country, teaming with actress Deidre Hall to write and publish Deidre Hall's Kitchen Closeup in 2010 and Deidre Hall's How Does She Do It in 2012. She's won national awards as a creative director for Silicon Valley companies, was creative director at E&J Gallo Winery, advertising manager at RedKen Laboratories, and freelanced for agencies in San Jose, LA, and New York. She has also worked as an actress, makeup artist, screenwriter, illustrator, legal journalist, and television weather person. Lynne has 3 grown children, 2 absolutely perfect grandchildren, and is president of the Pescadero Community Foundation. She and her husband have a small farm on the coast of Northern California, so she's not too far from where I am in Lake Tahoe. So I'm always excited to speak with another fellow Northern Californian. Welcome, Lynne. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be with you. And I know I've driven over 80 so many times, and now I'll wave when I drive over there. My youngest grandchild and youngest daughter are both in Reno, Nevada. So I make that trip as often as I can.
You know, we're going to talk about diabetes and how to really heal diabetes with food. So that's my wheelhouse now. So yeah, let's dive in and tell me about your backstory and how you came to be part of this project and really passionate about this work specifically.
Well, okay, and I'm going to start from the front because I love to be able to say I'm 77. Yes, I am 77 years old, and for a diabetic, that's an achievement. That's great to feel good about being 77. And I'm looking for another 25 years, and I want them to be great. And I want them to be great for all of you out there listening who have been diagnosed. I knew that I was type 2 diabetic, or was heading that direction in my early 40s, which a lot of us don't learn until later on. But I had gestational diabetes. And as you may know, again, listeners who are familiar with diabetes and what it does, that's an indicator that you are probably going to go down that path. But what they told me, Lara, back in the day was it's just going to progress. You do the best you can and don't eat and keep your weight, but it's just going to progress. And guess what? No, it doesn't.
Right.
You can definitely control it, manage it, reverse it. And my numbers now just look normal. I will never not pay attention. I will never not do what I do to stay healthy, because it's always there. It can come back if you don't watch what you're doing and eating and so on. But I am happy to be here with you, telling everybody who's listening that you can fix it. And yes, I take metformin, which I find is hilarious now. It's the longevity drug. It's now a designer drug, right? That everybody wants to take. Well, guess what? I have it and I take it every night and I'm fine taking it. But yeah, I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have any symptoms of anything except I'm a little crabby at night. I get tired, but I get to do that because I'm a grandma. So
yeah.
It's okay.
So the book that we're discussing today is Brownies for Breakfast, and it's a cookbook.
Yes.
But what intrigued me and what, instigated me wanting to have you on the show is that it is dairy-free, keto, low carb. It's really sort of, and the title too, I feel like it sort of gives, whether you have insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, or even really type 1 diabetes, and you don't want to live that life of deprivation all the time. it gives you the tools that so many people are looking for out there. And, I think, unfortunately, diabetes is one of the worst managed health conditions that Western medicine address.
Yeah.
And technically, Western medicine addresses all of them, but, to some extent, better or worse across the spectrum. So, so I'm really excited to see a book like this out there and available to the public.
Thank you. And the more I know, the more research, the more reading I do, and probably the same for you, the more you realize that it doesn't matter if you've got heart disease, kidney disease, fatty liver disease, whatever, the prescription is essentially the same. It's real food, whole food, mostly plants. There you go.
Right.
And the only diet that works is the one you can stay on for the rest of your life. So,
Right.
it really tickles me now on YouTube, and I watch I try and kind of stay up with who's doing what. And there are all these bros who come out in their t-shirts with their muscles bulging, and they're 32 or 35, and they're talking about the best, the optimum human diet for longevity. And I'm thinking, what the heck do you know? You're 32, right? You're 35. What do you know about longevity, right? And plus, when your wife finds out how much time you spend in the gym, she's going to kill you. So it doesn't matter what you're telling people about longevity. Yeah, so keto, carnivore, paleo, it's really simple, and it's kind of all the same thing. It's good sense. Real food. Read the label on everything that you eat. And if it's got more than 2 or 3 ingredients, make sure you know what those ingredients are. And if you can't pronounce them, you probably shouldn't be eating them. That's my personal feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I always played a game with my kids. I've been at this a long time, and I would make them read to me the label. And if they had to struggle to read those words, I'd go, mm-hmm. And what are those things? The dextrose, maltose, or what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And what that is a chemical added to the food by a guy in a building in New Jersey so that you can't stop eating it, so that you'll be addicted to it. And the way to avoid that is really simple. Just don't eat. Can I say crap?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you can curse if you
Good.
want.
So the secret is don't eat crap. That's
Yeah.
really basically it. And Americans have been eating crap, and it's the end of summer as you and I record this, and so your friends are coming back from Europe, those who have been brave enough to travel to Europe,
Mm-hmm.
but they all come back saying the same thing. The food is amazing. The food is so wonderful. Well, guess why? Most of those chemicals are against the law in Europe to put in
Mm-hmm.
foods. And most of the food that you've been eating was fresh. It was picked that morning or the day before. It was, made from an old recipe by a grandma somewhere. So yeah, the food is amazing. And that's what this book is about. It's granny food. It's simple, doable, a few ingredients, because I'm not trained as a chef. I don't call myself a fabulous cook. What I am is a single mom who raised 3 kids, working all the time. Okay, this is familiar to many of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so my skill set is how I get a meal on the table in 15 minutes. That's healthy, delicious, looks good, tastes good, boom. That's the whole deal right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for sure, I mean, like, so many of us have such busy, busy lives. And, there's, of course, the busy professional working woman, like you said, providing for her children and family. And, or maybe it's just, maybe even if you're single, because I feel like a lot of people too, they're just like, well, it's just me. Why would I cook when it's just me?
And I talk a lot about not eating alone. I would like everybody to think of, this is not news. There is a loneliness epidemic. And
Mhm.
loneliness has been implicated in more deaths than anything in this country. It is a medical problem. And one of the ways that you can solve it is to try and find some way to not eat always by yourself. And that can be the lady down the hall who, you take her something, you knock on the door, Mrs. Johnson, I made some soup. Would you like some? Old as time, right?
Mhm.
It's very old. Or go down the street and sit outside and eat something in a park, I don't know, anywhere that you can where there are people. Call a friend, text a friend and say, I'm going to eat at 6 and I have more than I can eat. Come over. Just really make an effort to not always, I mean, a lot of us are going to be alone for some meals, but if you're eating every meal alone, I know you, and you get sloppy. You don't pay attention. You just shovel it in. You're hungry and you just shovel it in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, mindful eating is such a huge so it's not just what we eat, it's how we eat. So,
Thank
are
you.
we eating
Yes.
distracted? Or do we have the TV on?
Yes.
Are we eating standing up? I am actually guilty of this today. My husband and I are in the middle of our laundry room remodel, and I was like, "I have to eat real quick before we get this project started." And I'm like, "I know this is bad for me," but, so
I know. If
even
I'd been in the room, I would have hollered at you. Sit down.
I
Sit
was
down.
hollering at myself in my head.
Yeah.
So it is about holding ourselves accountable when we know better, do better. And like you said, bringing that community in so that, maybe even your best friends across the country, but maybe you guys FaceTime together while you eat or
Absolutely.
something like that.
Yes,
I
you can do
mean,
it now.
yeah. So
It's
even
fun.
though, like the social media, they've studied it and found that it actually is contributing to this loneliness epidemic. I think there's definitely ways that we can use this technology to our advantage. So it
Thank
doesn't
you.
have to be that way.
It's how you use it. And I'll give you an example. I have breakfast with my grandson, who will be 2 in a month, and we have breakfast together whenever we can on Facebook Messenger. And he loves it. And it's, hi, Mimi, and I
Yeah.
see what he's eating, and he shows me that he knows how to use his spoon. And that's how he knows me. If it weren't for that, it would be weeks between visits. As it is, we get to visit every day. So that is a great tool. Thank you for bringing that up. The other thing it's important to remember is that it's not just what you eat or who you eat with, it's when you eat.
Mhm.
Very, very important. And a lot of people are talking about fasting and intermittent fasting now, but for the diabetic community, it is really, really transformative. If you can train yourself to eat your last bite of food before 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and leave hours before you go to bed, a couple of very important things happen. One, you sleep better. Two, you initiate autophagy, which I don't know if you've talked about it on your show yet, but it's a vital process. Oh, hello. It's
She's
a
funny.
vital process that your body does, which means autophagy, virtually means self-eating. So it's your body consuming. The cells are eating up the worn out cells. They're recycling the cells that need to be recycled. They're doing all this essential cleaning, house cleaning work that they can only do when you stop shoveling food in. So it's that pizza that you have in front of Jimmy Kimmel at night that's doing the damage. What you eat in the morning and midday when the sun is high and your body is churning and your digestion is going, that's not the food you need to worry about. It's the food that you eat late that you need to worry about. And your sleep, your deep sleep, and you know this, you don't heal except in deepest sleep. That's the only time your body is able to really heal.
Mhm.
So it's the combination of sleep and food and company that are the magic.
Yes, unfortunately, still on the traditional Western medicine allopathic side of things, they're still beating this drum of eat every 3 to 4 hours to make
No.
sure that you don't go too low, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you're bottoming out within 3 to 4 hours, then your medication, like I would assume that you're on medication, and that medication actually needs to be tweaked and dialed in
Right.
and optimized a little bit better. We
And we
should
were
all,
always
yeah.
told, yes, eat continually, small meals, and it's out there still today. People are still saying that. And it took me a while to get comfortable with a little bit of hunger,
Mm-hmm.
because I always kind of read hunger as a signal that, oh, something's wrong. My blood sugar's low, this, that. No, it's just your body's going, okay, good. You're emptying out. That's good. That's fine.
Right. Yeah. Now, if you're getting lightheaded, if you have
That's
a
different.
headache, yeah, those are, and you're maybe cold sweats or shaking, that those are signs of low blood sugar.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a little, gnaw of hunger, and that's normal, and we should all be tuning in again, like going back to this whole concept of mindful eating, is tuning into our body and really
Yeah.
listening and saying, am I really hungry right now? Maybe I'm dehydrated and I just need some water. I
Yes.
tell a lot of my patients,
Yes.
if that first sign, that first little feeling of hunger, have a big glass of water and then revisit in like 15 to 20 minutes. If you're still hungry, then sure, eat something, you know, have
Another
a,
thing that happens is we're bored, and it reads
mm-hmm.
as hunger.
Oh,
Your body's going,
absolutely.
well, why don't you eat something? No, do something, right?
Right.
Distract yourself and do something. And an hour goes by, and all of a sudden you go, oh, yeah, okay, I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's that dopamine. Your body is looking for that
Mhm.
dopamine hit. So it's really interesting too when we get down into like the nitty gritty of the neurotransmitters and our hunger signals and all that stuff, and which might be a little bit too deep for for some out there, but just understanding that hunger is, yes, it's blood sugar operating. It's, like, is your stomach empty? But it's also neurotransmitter and hormonally driven as well. So
Yeah.
cortisol, like if you're running on stress mode and your cortisol is elevated, that can send you false signals of hunger as well.
Right. And if you're eating well at breakfast, and there's a lot of talk out there now about one meal a day or two meals a day. And again, the bros in the t-shirts are big on, oh, I only eat one meal a day. Well, fine. But most of us would prefer to eat more often than that. But there's no reason why you have to get up in the morning and shovel a lot of breakfast in.
Right.
Americans have always been told, oh, eat your breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. So no, really no. And especially if you're used to eating a bagel and cream cheese or something for breakfast, that's
Yeah.
big, big no. Just no. Um, so in my case, I have the luxury of not having to run off most days at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning to go to work. So I will eat for the first time very often at 10 or 11 in the morning, and I will eat. I My advice to everybody, and I do it myself, is I try and eat something leafy at every meal. So my breakfast usually includes something leafy, some chopped cabbage, something like that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the habits that I talk about in my book that is new to some people. If you're recently diagnosed and you're changing the way you're eating, I don't want you deprived. I want you to love your food. But what I talk about is more color, more texture, more variety, which means a little more work. Somebody's going to have to think about it ahead and buy this stuff. Somebody's going to have to actually go in the kitchen and chop something, a little bit of something, but it's not complicated. It just means you need to think about it. You can no
Right.
longer just open a package and shovel it in, or go
Yeah.
down the street or have DoorDash show up with it. You have to think about it. You have to be conscious of what you're eating and know that it is nutritious. And another way to think about that is every bite that goes in your body, you want to be nourishing you. Every single bite. So that doesn't mean going hungry or not eating enough, or it just means eat the best food, just the way you would feel about your Labrador retriever, right? You want little Fluffy to have the very best fuel, the very best food in his little body. Well, can we just think of ourselves with as much care and make sure that when we put something in, it's going to nourish us? It's not that
Right.
hard.
Yeah, I think just even this concept of habit changing when we are looking at, okay, we're staring down the long road of what could be, type 2 diabetes and all of the things that that entails. And that I think, I was even told like in my 30s, like, oh, your glucose is creeping up, you might have some insulin resistance, you might want to keep an eye on that. There is a history of diabetes in my family, but I feel like at this point, a long history, like who doesn't? Because we've been eating
Yeah.
like crap for so long.
Yeah.
But, so then that decision making, like, okay, I'm going to take an active role in my health. I'm going to start pay attention. I'm going to change my habits. It's a process versus I'm going to listen to the doctor, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do anything. I'm going to take the medication and expect it to fix me. Like these are two completely opposite approaches to the same problem. So are we going to, take an active role, empower ourselves, look at those habits honestly without self-judgment or beating up on yourself, love and compassion all the way, and, start small. What can you like fit in this week? Is it meal prepping? Maybe it's, actually going out instead of making your own salad. Maybe it's buying a salad kit, but making sure that, it doesn't have croutons and all the, the different things, it like just little steps here and there along the way.
I highly recommend Trader Joe's for having grab and go bags of salad with no cruddy dressing in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there in my book, one really popular recipe is 2 ingredients, and I highly recommend it. And it's a tahini dressing that you make with, guess what? Tahini, which, as you know, excellent food. It's protein, it's seeds, it's all the things that you need. And then some really good balsamic vinegar. I buy some from a local place that makes apple, Gravenstein apple cider vinegar and Blenheim apricot vinegar. And so just the flavor of a good vinegar and tahini makes the best dressing ever. That's all
Yeah.
you need to do.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and so part of this process too, I think people need to understand is that your taste buds, when you're eating the processed food, when you're eating the things with all the extra added sugar, fake sugar, high fructose corn syrup, maltodextrin, all of the quote unquote bad things, they're bad. They're not good for us. Let's just be honest. It changes your palate. It
Yeah.
changes your taste buds. It changes even how your brain senses what you're eating. So, part of this process, when we shift into eating real, whole, raw foods that are actually good for us, your palate is going to undergo some changes. And so
Yes.
that's to be expected. At first, you might have to work a little harder. I hate using that word work and hard together, but to make the food palatable for you, but it's just a transition, in terms of resensitizing your palate to all the different areas of taste, the bitter, the sour. Obviously, the sweet will, readjust itself when it's less stimulated all the time with over sweetness. So I think that's something to keep in mind too, is adding in those astringent flavors really actually helps to start shifting things, and that'll affect your cravings too. Once you resensitize your palate, your cravings for the sweet stuff will actually decrease. And yeah.
Absolutely. Your saliva changes chemically, and you'll be different. And another thing that I'm fond of saying is, of course, you know that sugar is addictive. And I don't know that everyone understands that we don't mean addictive in a metaphorical way. We mean it is addictive. And it's more addictive in the lab than heroin.
Mhm.
And so if I said to you, well, I'm addicted to heroin, but I'm going to cut back, what would you say to me? You'd say, girl, ditch it, drop it like a hot rock. Be done,
Mhm.
just stop. Stop. And that's my response to people saying, well, I'm not eating as much sugar as I used to. Stop. You know, if you only do one thing for your health, that's the thing I recommend today. Make that decision, because if you are really honest with yourself and you look up what that sugar is doing to your body, whether you're diabetic or not, wouldn't you tell your child? I mean, is this how you want to feed your family? Is this how you want to feed yourself? And a thing I am asked about often is sugar substitutes. I'm a believer in a good sugar substitute. And one of the ones that I want to mention today, if you don't know about it, listeners, is allulose. It's a natural product. It tastes great. It's got one ingredient in it. That ingredient is allulose. And it works great in the baked goods. It's not quite as sweet as sugar. You use maybe a little more sometimes to get as much sweetness, but it's a brilliant sugar substitute. So don't tell me that you can't quit sugar because you can't find a way to replace it that's healthy. You can. There's also chicory root. There's also, which is inulin. There's also, I don't know, there are a number of, I'm not big on xylitol, and erythritol has some problems for some people for digestive issues. But if you haven't tried it, get some allulose right now and see if that doesn't do the job for you. And it's also important that your food is beautiful. I'm just opening up pages of the book here. You know, some of the things that you will just cut up that you don't do a thing to, you'll find yourself going, wow, this is really pretty, right? It's really delicious looking. Here's stewed apricots, one of my favorite things in the whole world. So simple and so absolutely delicious. People ask me if I am vegan, and I have been. I spent a year as a vegan. After I went to a conference about it, and it was fascinating. And my numbers reflected that. My numbers looked fabulous after that year. They really, really bounced down to no more diabetes. So I interpreted that as, okay, I can take that forward. I do eat some meat carefully. I source my meat very carefully. It's local, it's grass-fed, it's, not factory farmed. I have neighbors who grow beef and lamb and things, and so I get local stuff. Eggs, same thing. The eggs are very nutritious. They're local. No chicken is harmed in the laying of the eggs that I eat. So I do eat those things, but in moderation. Duh.
Right. Yes, because there are some essential vitamins that only come from animal products. But I, remind my clients too that specifically milk, has so much sugar.
And
And so I
excuse me, ew.
yeah, gross. I mean, but it's so ingrained in our culture, especially in some areas of the country, and it's been, sort of drilled into our head by big pharma and big food, and even the USDA.
Yeah.
That, you have to have milk for certain vitamins and minerals, and that's just not true. There's more
No.
calcium, zinc, magnesium in spinach than there is, a glass of milk.
Or
And
broccoli or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and the hormones that most of the milk that you're buying out there, those cows are not healthy. You're drinking that inflammation too. You're drinking those chemicals, you're drinking those antibiotics.
Yeah.
And on top of all the sugar that is in that milk. So I'm dairy free personally. Also, I have a casein allergy, unfortunately. But it took me forever to even figure that out. I was in my 30s before I realized that the
So
milk was
many
causing,
people.
my chronic sinus infections and so many more inflammation issues that were going on in my body. When I eliminated dairy, so many things cleared up.
And that's what I tell people too. First thing, if you're having an issue, get the dairy out right now. Of course, take the sugar out right now. And a startling number of people are at that point, oh, I'm good. This fine. All of my stomach issues gone. I'm okay. Milk is the big one for sure. And now, and the last few years have brought this wonderful bunch of new cheese-like cashew cheeses. And then the other thing that people need to know is that if it's goat's milk or sheep's milk, it's not the same protein
Exactly.
as cow's milk. So can you eat sheep's milk, goat's milk? Or
I can, yes.
okay.
And so, yeah, I would even tell people too, like the kefir products. So, because,
Yes.
Fermented foods are so good for us. So,
Yes.
yeah, a sheep or a goat's milk kefir product too can be really
Excellent.
good for that microflora.
Which brings us to some swell things like kimchi that no one was talking about unless you were Korean 4 or 5 years ago. And all of a sudden people have discovered how colorful, how delicious, how versatile kimchi is. If you haven't tried it, try it. And a wonderful combination would be a great kind of bread. And we'll talk about that in a minute. What makes good bread? And goat's milk cheese and kimchi in a grilled sandwich. Fabulous. So good. Or just put really good dill pickles and goat's milk cheese on good bread and grill it. Who doesn't love that? It's yummy. And it's not that different than what you've been eating. It's just better.
Yeah. So let's talk about that bread what does make a good quote unquote bread?
Yes. And I've got my book open to pancakes, pumpkin pancakes recipe in here. Delicious, not a thing wrong with them. So easy that your kids can make them. And, there's recipes in here also for sugar-free donuts. Hello, who doesn't love that, right? And you bake them. So you can do this. The only thing different will be you'll have to buy that the donut baking pan. Okay, here's what I call bread. This is sourdough walnut bread from, there are 2 bakeries locally that make this. One is Acme up in the city, and one is Companion Bake Shop in Santa Cruz. And they use local einkorn wheat, which is old-timey wheat like your grandma ate. And they grind it themselves, and it's sourdough, it's fermented, and it has nothing in it but wheat, the right kind of wheat, and walnuts, and water, and maybe salt, and the sourdough starter. That's it. And it is beyond delicious. It is the most wonderful bread. It's just, if you're used to fluffy white bread without much taste, the first time you eat this bread, you'll go, wow, because it really has flavor and texture. And you've eaten something. So 1 or 2 pieces of this with something good next to it or inside of it, and you've had a meal and you've eaten. And I know you've talked probably about that in the past too. The more you're nourishing yourself, the less hungry you will be after you eat. You don't need to eat in 2 hours because you've eaten. You're good.
Right. Yes. And one of the things I also go through with almost all my patients is really evaluating their macros, meaning how much protein, how much fat, and how much carbs are we actually eating? Of course, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, we really want to cut down on the amount of carbs as much as possible. But we also don't want to overdo the protein. Yeah, and there's also this concept of empty carbs, meaning like carbs that have no nutritional value whatsoever, versus the sourdough that you were just speaking about. That will have some nutritional value because, again, it's from a real heritage varietal of
real food.
Wheat. Yeah, it's real food, so it has vitamins, nutrients, minerals in it. And then, of course, whatever you add to that bread. So if you're adding avocado, or maybe you're adding some ghee or butter or peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, any of those things, anytime you add a protein and a fat to that carb, it lessens that spike that you get. So you get, you'll still get a rise, but it won't be the spike and then the crash. It'll be a much more even response.
And the fiber, huge,
Yes. Yes.
huge. So
Yes.
important.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so good. I love this conversation. So, one of the things, in the title of your book is it's the brownies for breakfast and the people who love them. For diabetics and the people who love them.
Yes.
Why did you pick that specifically for the title?
And I know you know what I'm talking about. It's very hard to be a loner in your own family, sitting down at the table and grandpa needs one thing and baby Louise needs one thing and daddy never eats that, so he needs another thing. To be successful, I deeply believe that you need to all be eating pretty much the same stuff. So there's no reason why you, as a diabetic or about to be diabetic or thinking about becoming diabetic, have to eat differently than the rest of your family. It's just everybody needing to eat whole food, real food, more plants, and it benefits everyone. And there are recipes in my book for macaroni and cheese. Who doesn't love macaroni and cheese? But in my book, you make it with cauliflower instead of just overly ground, overly processed white flour.
Mm-hmm.
And the pastas that I recommend are either made with chickpea flour or brown rice pasta.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still eat all of those things that you love, but you're just making them a smarter way. And if you're eating the same stuff, if the whole family is eating the same stuff, it's easier to stay with it. You can all stay with it. And the only good diet is the one that you can all stay with. And you've talked about blue zones, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at those, if you talk to those 95, 105-year-old men from Sardinia, they've been eating the same stuff as the rest of their family. Everybody's eating the same stuff, and they have for their whole life. It's just good food. It's
Right.
whole food. So
Well,
if
yeah.
you go to a family meal there, they're all sitting around the table enjoying the same food. There's not a separate thing for grandpa and a separate thing for baby and a separate thing for mama and daddy and a separate thing for teenage Marie. No, it's all the same.
Right. And, this whole concept of, well, I can't afford to eat healthier. I can't afford to eat well. I can only afford fast food. And my response to that was, well, you're going to pay now or pay later. Can you afford pharmaceutical drugs? Can you afford insulin? Can you afford Ozempic if that's the route that you decide to go down? Like, no.
Right. And I believe I actually wrote this into the book because I get this same thing from people. If you go into Starbucks and buy a brownie, how much is it? $4, $4.50, $5, or a donut? In my book, made with pumpkin, real pumpkin, and nut butter, excellent food. They're high protein, high fiber, no sugar. They're better than the best protein bar you ever. And my brownies are about 50 cents a piece, and they're a meal.
Mm-hmm.
Whole food, real food. So don't tell me, anybody, that you cannot afford to be healthy. You can't afford not to be healthy.
Right.
85% of the bankruptcies in this country are health related because none of us have good insurance. Very few of us do. And your insurance will not cover. And if you really get sick, if you do have complications of diabetes, whatever, you can't afford it. You will break your family. One of the reasons I'm doing what I do is because my mother died when I was 18. She died of a chronic disease. She had a kidney disease. And so not diabetes, but at the age of 18, I saw up close and personal what happens to a family when someone in that family has a chronic disease. It took all our money, the house, My dog had to be sent off, literally.
Mm.
I went off to college that year, but I quit because there was no money. It broke our family. And I don't want that for anybody.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true, and, I think, again, there's just this and I feel like what you and I and platforms like this are putting out there is being heard more and more, and I think it's growing, and I do think there's a shift happening. But for the longest time, it's just been so dominated by, these messages of give your power away to the medicine, give your power away to big food, big pharma, the government, your doctor even. And really the new health and healing paradigm is empowerment, is an open and equal discussion between your healthcare provider and yourself. Them telling you the truth, hopefully, and figuring out what works for you within that dynamic. Okay, like I'm going to take this piece of advice, but I'm going to leave this other one and I'm going to find a different solution, and knowing that that's okay. And I've heard from so many people, well, oh, my doctor is mad at me, or even like sometimes they'll say, well, I feel pressured or bullied by my physician. And that's just not a healthy dynamic in any relationship, let alone with someone that's supposed to be there to help you
Yeah.
heal. So, I think it's really important for all of us to realize that we create our health. It's our decisions. I think I have if it hasn't published yet, I have an episode coming out where I talk about radical responsibility.
Yeah.
And, that is also an act of self-love. Do we love ourselves enough to make the right choices, knowing in our hearts what the right choice is for us?
And you just said it, it's one of my favorite words, decision. It's a decision that you make.
Yeah, it's a choice.
It's a choice.
And, it didn't take you, you didn't get to this point if you're here, picking up the book and, it didn't take overnight to develop, right? So it's not going to heal overnight. But again, bringing that self-love, that self-compassion, that patience, and again, just making, another choice, a better choice each and every day. Incremental changes actually do build up or create big shifts, big changes over the long term. So don't, don't try to push yourself too far too fast. And then, because that can sometimes set us up for failure. So just like slow and steady really does win the race.
I guess, but people always use the words baby steps, and I'm not real big on baby steps. I like the idea of just making that decision and then going for it and doing the best you can every day. And I have a new thing, Lara, I want to talk about. I don't want to forget to talk about it because I was told on the Audible book website that they did not want to do cookbooks and they didn't want to do art books. So what I did was a cookbook art book on Audible.
That's awesome.
But there's a reason for it. I think you'll appreciate this. People seem to respond differently to information that they hear when it's just them in the car listening. And especially women, we've got, oh my gosh, we've got the kids' schedules and the husband's schedules and the stuff, so much roiling around. But most of us have some time alone in the car every day at some point to listen, or maybe when you're at the gym or you're walking or you're running. So there's now an Audible version of Brownies for Breakfast that it's inexpensive compared to the hardback version. I think it's $12.99. And I want to hear from people about how it's working. And the idea is that you partner it with, you download the ebook, which is also inexpensive. So you can hear about the stories, you can hear about the whys and the wherefores and the new habits and how to stock your kitchen. Then when you go home, you can download the recipe on your iPad or your iPhone and see the picture and see the recipe and do the thing. So it's not just a recipe book. It's a here's how you do it book.
Good.
And
So good.
and there's more to it than just recipes. And we all know that. But I'd love to hear from people. Please, if you're able to try it, get in touch with me on my website, lynnebowman.com. It's Lynnne. BOWMAN.com. And ask me a question, tell me what you think, sign up, I'll send you additional recipes. And not often, because I hate it when people just fill my inbox up with stuff, but I promise you, you'll enjoy these recipes. There's one I just put out for orange snack cake that you make with a whole orange, including the peel. You just chop that thing up a little bit and throw it in the blender with the batter, and it is so good. I mean, orange snack cake, that's not punishment, right?
Right. Right.
But it's good food if you make it with good ingredients.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I'm so happy that you came to this project and did this book and that it's on Audible. I am definitely an Audible consumer myself.
Good, good.
So, everybody head over to, Amazon, whether you get the Kindle or the physical book, and then Audible, of course, is available. LynneBowman.com, LYNNE. And all of these links will also be available on the show notes page, which lives at drlaramay.com/podcast. So thank you, Lynne. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Is there anything else before we finish up today?
Thank you, Dr. Lara. Oh, we could go on and on, I
We
think.
could.
We're food geeks, right?
Yeah.
And we love the idea that we can help heal people by just teaching them how to make a better brownie. I mean, that's good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't love that?
Who doesn't love that?
Yes. So everyone out there, know that there are resources for you. There is help. There is a way through and to reversal, really. If that's what you want for yourself, you can definitely create that in your life. And this is, I think, a great tool to add to your repertoire, your toolbox, however you'd like to say it. So again, Lynne, thank you so much. It has been a real
Thank you,
pleasure.
Dr. Lara.